Hi, and welcome to Chapter 3 in Family Sociology. In Chapter 3, we're going to be covering the topic of getting together. Mate selection is a natural starting point for the exploration of family life. Most people regard this step as the beginning of a new family. Now, typically, mate selection is identified as either arranged by the family or directed by the partners themselves. In reality, there's a relationship continuum. There are several theories about mate selection that we'll review in part 2, and each of these sociological perspectives has a slightly different view of this as well. And we're going to touch on sexuality as an important aspect of most intimate relationships. Dating is a relatively new custom to North America, actually, and we are going to look at the development of the practice. As well as some of the issues it involves. Because of the social expectations regarding mate selection, some groups of people may be disadvantaged in this domain, and we're going to explore that. The beginning of a relationship is crucial to the later path, and the way that the relationship is established is usually the way the relationship continues. Surprise! This chapter ends with a discussion of some of the obstacles to relationships. So let's start. A woman and a man meet. They fall passionately in love. They get married. However, this may be a myth. As many people experience with patterns, has not always been successful. So we are going to look at diversity, or the different ways in which we start relationships and families. We tend to first separate from our family of orientation. Remember this from part 1, remember that from What is a Family? The family of orientation, your parents and siblings, to establish the who am I, considering your education, your career opportunities and choices, and establishing intimate relationships. We're going to clarify intimate. This is an important first step. Launching, often more an emotional and a psychological than just a physical action. This is the launching from your family home and getting out on your own at some point. Successfully launched, we may then consider creation of our own family, what to bring to our family with us and what not to, and what we want to create in our new family. Psychiatrist Erik Erikson, he indicates that one of the most important developmental tasks in young adulthood is intimacy. And I put it in quotes because it's not necessarily what you think. In this developmental task, intimacy has a specific meaning. It's a series of close, emotional relationship with another person, the ability and the freedom to disclose one's innermost self to another. Now, this is not something you do with everybody. This level of intimacy is not with everybody, but it's just with a very select few. We each define our relationship of ourselves, then we realign our relationship with our intimate partner, family, and friends, and essentially, we have a moving from an I to a we. The establishment of this foundation of a relationship begins with mate selection. That's the first thing. We don't have a relationship and then get married. We find a mate. So mate selection is first. It begins the road to family. Now, this can be a heterosexual or homosexual. You choose a life partner. So you can choose a life partner. You live together, never marry. You marry before living together or cohabitate and then marry. Others don't marry. However, mate selection occurs for you. It's divided into two basic streams. Decided by the couple, decided by families of the couple. Both streams are tied to culture and values of those cultures. Now, we can consider a broad categories of cultures. There's collective cultures and there's individual cultures. Collective cultures they value group goals and are above individual desires and needs, whereas the individual cultures, you could look at North America and many of European cultures as being individual cultures. They value achievement, individual rights. Now, arranged marriages are more often associated with collective cultures. Interestingly, in most societies and historical periods, marriage has been at least partly arranged. Now, based on family considerations rather than the individual desires. In South Asian families, for example, men are expected to provide financial support for the families of procreation as well as other relatives. If a father dies, his eldest son or brother will support the widow and children. Now, because they're not regarded as wage earners, women are devalued as financial liabilities. The well-being of the family as a whole takes priority over the individual happiness. Now, although arranged marriages have become rarer, they do continue to occur in many parts of the world and among many immigrant groups in Western societies. There may be pressures of children of new Canadians to marry within their ethnic group. A common strategy used by parents is to restrict the social interactions of their children. Now, because they may want to follow customs they've learned in Canada instead of those of their ethnic group, second-generation immigrants indicate that the conflicts with their parents in the realm of dating and marriage are commonplace. Forced marriages are marriages in which people are coerced into marrying against their will. Very different from arranged marriages in which the free and informed consent of both parties is present. In contrast to South Asian countries, mainstream North America culture values individual achievement. All people are responsible both for their own success and for the well-being of their families of procreation. Both males and females are valued as individuals in this system. Family tends to be defined more narrowly than in South Asia, for example. When the individual social security system fails, there's little formal expectation that extended family members and they will help. Now, romantic love we're going to touch on here because it seems that we think that romantic love has been around forever. Romantic love is more of a recent historical pursuit. The origins of the term courtship is linked to 12th century France. Now, when I say not that long ago, of course, I'm still talking, 800 years. But we've been around for 35,000 years, so 800 years is not that much. So they hold, the whole point of this 12th century France where young knights perform deeds to prove themselves worthy of love from the lady of the manor. Given the knight lack of financial resources, these deeds were impressive. Over time, sex and romance, love became gradually linked along with the emphasis of individuality. During the Industrial Revolution, young people wanted the right to choose their own mates. Love became the basis of marriage. Western society has gradually shifted from arranged marriages towards free choice. And it was it was a bumpy rather than a smooth shift, although more quickly in some parts of the population than in others. Early settlers from Europe brought this tradition with them to North America, where the focus was on romantic love and free choice and was combined with the emphasis on individual achievement. Ira Reese in 1980 developed what he called the Wheel of Love, and according to this theory, all forms of love and friendship develop through this 4 processes. The first is feeling of rapport. When people feel comfortable with each other and they reveal aspects of themselves, such as their experiences, hopes, and fears. The second phase is self-revelation. This can cover many areas of life. It can also expose private feelings and ideas. Usually, only close relationships involve deep revelations. These often encompass sexual activity. The third phase is the development of our mutual dependencies. Individuals begin to rely on each other and share ideas, jokes, and intimate feelings. And then, thus, the fourth process, personal need fulfillment. It comes into play if individuals are fulfilled, there is a growing rapport, and this circular process is renewed. Since women often tend to be more attuned to the relationship, they may move more quickly to self-revelation and mutual dependency. It's important to note that arranged and self-chosen relationships fall on a continuum, with completely arranged marriages on one side and completely free chosen and self-chosen on the other side. In North America, most individuals are at the romantic love end of the scale. We are socialized in childhood to fall in love. So is freedom of choice in relationships development real? Well, if we've been socialized to believe this, then is it really a choice? Is one argument. Theoretically, we marry almost anyone we choose, but we have limited in many social and cultural ways. There are legal barriers to marry certain people. One marriage at a time, for example, incest taboos. In some cultures, homosexual relationships are discouraged or are illegal. We tend to rely on a field of eligibility or field of eligibles, people who are considered acceptable potential partners by both the individual and by the society in which they live. When substantial age differences exist, women tend to be younger than their male partners. Some terms related to the influence of our choices in intimate relationships. Geographic factors can influence, and they become important. We tend to marry people who are around our region. It's called proquicity. The process of choosing partners on the basis of certain traits is known as assortive mating. Not sort of mating, assortive mating. Similarity over differences. Similarity about intelligence, education, ethnic background, religion, even attractiveness. The opposites attract may be true in physics, but not so much in relationships. Homogamy, the tendency to marry people who are similar to you, is partly one of the strengths, in fact, of a lot of relationship development. So that will end our part one here. Now we're going to review the theories of mate selection, sexuality, and issues of the relationship in a more modern world. We'll see you in part two.